The hallway camera blind spot. Security systems document everything. Motion sensors track movement through buildings. Cameras record hallways, stairwells, entry points. Coverage maps show monitored zones in blue and blind spots in red. Most blind spots are intentional, budget limitations, equipment placement, areas deemed low priority. But some blind spots document something else. Gaps in coverage where time doesn't pass the same way, where people enter and don't emerge for hours, where footage shows nothing, but something is watching. Tonight's file comes from a corporate office complex in the financial district. Third-floor corridor, 8 feet of hallway with no camera coverage, and employees who lose hours walking through it. This is the hallway camera blind spot. The files never close. The darkness never forgets. Jennifer Cates worked as a compliance officer for Meridian Financial Group, located on the 3rd floor of the Greystone building downtown. The office occupied the entire floor, 40 desks, 6 conference rooms, and a break area near the elevator bank. Standard corporate layout, nothing unusual, except for the hallway connecting the main office to the emergency stairwell. A straight corridor, 60 feet long, lined with identical beige walls and fluorescent ceiling lights, and 8 feet in the middle, where the security cameras didn't cover. The gap existed because of how the cameras were positioned. Camera 3A covered the office entrance and the first 30 feet of hallway. Camera 3B covered the stairwell door and the last 22 feet. Between them, an 8-foot blind spot where 2 camera fields should have overlapped but didn't. A technical error during installation, never corrected because it seemed harmless, just a small gap. But in September 2024, employees started reporting something strange. The first incident involved a junior analyst named Marcus Reed. He left his desk at 2 p.m. to use the stairwell for his afternoon break, walking down a few flights, then back up. A habit he'd developed to break up the workday. Security footage from camera 3A showed him entering the hallway at 2:03 p.m. He walked toward the blind spot and disappeared from frame. Camera 3B, covering the stairwell end, showed him emerging and opening the stairwell door at 4:47 p.m., nearly 3 hours later. But when co-workers asked where he'd been, Marcus was confused. I went down to the lobby and back, maybe 20 minutes. His watch showed 2:23 p.m. 20 minutes had passed for him. Security footage showed 2 hours and 44 minutes. The IT department reviewed the footage. No gaps in the recording, no corrupted files. The timestamps were continuous. Marcus had been in that hallway, in the 8-foot blind spot, for over 2.5 hours, but he had no memory of the time, no awareness of the delay. He'd walked through the gap like always, felt nothing unusual, and emerged believing only minutes had passed. It flagged it as a technical anomaly, possibly a playback error. They recalibrated the cameras and moved on. 2 weeks later, it happened again, this time to Jennifer herself. She left her desk at 11:15 a.m. to retrieve documents from the file room near the stairwell. The route required passing through the hallway. She remembered walking through, feeling nothing unusual, just the familiar corridor with its beige walls and humming lights. She reached the file room, grabbed what she needed, and returned to her desk. Her co-worker looked up. "You've been gone for hours. We were about to call security." Jennifer checked her phone. 2:51 p.m. 3.5 hours had passed, but her watch showed 11:31. 16 minutes. Security reviewed the footage. Camera 3A showed Jennifer entering the hallway at 11:17 a.m. She disappeared into the blind spot. Camera 3B showed her emerging at 2:48 p.m. and continuing to the file room. 3 hours and 31 minutes in an 8-foot stretch of hallway. Jennifer had no explanation, no memory of delay. She'd walked through the corridor in what felt like seconds. The time discrepancy existed only in the external record, not in her experience. The building's facilities manager, a man named Carl Winters, was contacted. He examined the hallway personally. Standard construction, drywall over metal studs, drop ceiling with acoustic tiles, fluorescent fixtures every 8 feet. Nothing unusual about the blind spot section. No equipment, no structural anomalies, just empty corridor. He measured the distance, exactly 8 feet between camera coverage. He walked through it himself. Nothing, no sensation, no delay. He appeared on camera 3B 3 seconds after disappearing from camera 3A. Normal transit time. But over the next month, 12 more incidents occurred. Always employees passing through the blind spot. Always a time discrepancy between their perception and the recorded footage. Some lost minutes, others lost hours. The longest was 6 hours and 14 minutes for an employee who felt she'd walked through in under 10 seconds. The pattern was consistent. Time inside the blind spot moved differently. Faster for those inside, slower for external observers, or vice versa. The mechanics weren't clear, just the result. People disappeared into 8 feet of hallway and emerged hours later with no awareness of the missing time. Jennifer started documenting the incidents. She created a spreadsheet tracking every occurrence: date, employee name, entry time, exit time, perceived duration versus recorded duration. 14 incidents total by October. No pattern in who was affected. Different employees, different times of day. The only constant was the location, the 8-foot blind spot. She brought her findings to the building management. They agreed to install an additional camera to eliminate the gap. But when technicians attempted the installation, the equipment malfunctioned. The camera would power on, display a live feed, then go dark after 30 seconds. Repeated attempts failed. The blind spot remained. Jennifer decided to investigate herself. She brought a portable camera, a small action camera with time-stamped recording, and clipped it to her jacket. At 3 p.m. on a Tuesday, she walked through the hallway alone. She started recording before entering. The camera captured her approach to the blind spot. She stepped into the 8-foot gap. On the recording, the footage continued for 7 seconds. She walked through normally, emerged on the other side. Total transit time, 7 seconds. But when she checked the hallway security footage later, camera 3A showed her entering at 3:04 p.m. Camera 3B showed her emerging at 6:32 p.m. 3.5 hours. The portable camera's timestamp matched her perception. 3:04 p.m. to 3:04:07 p.m. 7 seconds, 2 timelines, 2 realities, 1 experienced, 1 recorded. Jennifer watched her portable footage repeatedly. Nothing unusual visible, just her walking through a hallway. But the building security system documented hours passing. She showed the recordings to Carl Winters. He contacted a security systems specialist, a woman named Dr. Evelyn Marsh, who consulted on technical anomalies for corporate installations. Dr. Marsh reviewed the footage and the incident logs. Her conclusion was troubling. The blind spot isn't a gap in coverage, it's a gap in something else. Time, space, I don't know. But people aren't passing through 8 feet of hallway. They're passing through something adjacent to it. Dr. Marsh proposed an experiment. Multiple cameras, multiple perspectives. She set up 4 portable cameras positioned around the blind spot, one facing into the gap from each direction, 2 on tripods placed inside the blind spot itself at the 3-foot and 6-foot marks. She recruited a volunteer, a security guard named Thomas Hill, who agreed to walk through while all cameras recorded simultaneously. The test began at 9 p.m. when the office was empty. Thomas entered the hallway from the office side. Camera 3A tracked him approaching. He stepped into the blind spot. The 2 cameras inside the gap should have captured him walking between them, but the footage showed something different. Thomas appeared on the first internal camera at the 3-foot mark. He was motionless, frozen mid-step, his eyes open but unmoving. Behind him, visible in the camera's field of view, were figures, 3 of them, tall, indistinct, shadows with vaguely human proportions. They stood around Thomas, close but not touching, observing. One leaned in, its featureless head tilted as if examining him. The footage continued for 6 hours and 42 minutes. Thomas remained frozen. The figures remained present. Then, abruptly, Thomas completed his step. The figures vanished. He walked out of frame, emerging on camera 3B 7 seconds after he'd entered from camera 3A. Thomas remembered nothing unusual, just walking through the hallway, 7 seconds. But the internal camera had documented nearly 7 hours of him frozen in place, surrounded by figures he never saw. Dr. Marsh isolated frames from the footage. The figures were consistent across all recordings, present in every angle captured by the cameras inside the blind spot, but invisible to the person passing through. Invisible to cameras outside the gap. Only the equipment placed within the blind spot documented them. Jennifer watched the footage with growing dread. Everyone who'd passed through that hallway had been surrounded by those figures, frozen in time while something studied them, and none of them knew. She checked the logs. Over 3 months, 47 people had walked through the blind spot. 47 encounters with the figures, all documented by the building security system as hours-long gaps, but experienced as seconds by those involved. Dr. Marsh recommended sealing the hallway. Whatever is happening in that space, it's not safe. We don't know what those figures are, what they want, or what they might do. But building management resisted. Sealing the hallway meant rerouting foot traffic, reconfiguring emergency exits, expensive modifications. They wanted more data first, more testing. Dr. Marsh warned against it, but a second test was scheduled. This time Jennifer volunteered. She wanted answers, wanted to understand what happened in those missing hours. She entered the hallway at midnight. Dr. Marsh monitored from the security office with all cameras recording. Jennifer stepped into the blind spot. On the internal cameras she froze immediately, mid-step, eyes open, and the figures appeared. 4 of them this time, surrounding her. One reached out, its hand or appendage extending toward her face, not touching, just hovering inches away. Another moved behind her, its form blending with the shadows. The cameras captured it all. Hours passed. Jennifer remained frozen. The figures remained present. Then something changed. At the 4-hour mark, one of the figures tilted its head, as if noticing the cameras. It moved toward the lens, closer, its form filling the frame. The camera went dark. Then the second camera. Both feeds cut simultaneously. Dr. Marsh radioed to building security. "Pull her out, now." Security guards entered the hallway from both ends. They saw Jennifer standing in the blind spot, motionless. They called to her. No response. One guard approached, reaching for her arm. The moment he touched her, she blinked, looked around. "What's wrong?" Her watch showed 12 seconds had passed. The security footage showed 4 hours and 18 minutes. Dr. Marsh reviewed what remained of the internal camera recordings. The last frames before the feeds died showed the figure directly in front of the lens. Featureless, but the shadow suggested a face, something looking back at the camera, looking at whoever might watch the footage. Dr. Marsh deleted the files, removed the internal cameras, refused to discuss what she'd seen. She recommended immediate closure of the hallway. Seal it, don't let anyone through, ever. This time, building management agreed. Construction crews installed a wall across the hallway, dividing it into 2 segments. The office side corridor now ended at a drywall barrier 30 feet from the entrance. The stairwell side corridor began at a matching barrier 22 feet from the door. The 8-foot blind spot was enclosed, isolated between walls, no access, no passage. Warning signs posted on both barriers. Authorized personnel only, do not enter. The cameras remained active, monitoring the sealed ends, but the blind spot itself was left dark, unwatched. The internal cameras had been removed and destroyed per Dr. Marsh's instructions. For 2 weeks, nothing happened. Then the report started. Employees working late heard sounds from behind the barrier. Footsteps, slow, rhythmic, pacing back and forth in the sealed section. Security investigated. The sound stopped when they approached, but resumed when they left. One guard used a thermal camera to scan the barrier. Heat signatures appeared on the other side. Multiple figures, moving in patterns, walking through space that should be empty. The guard reported his findings. Building management ordered the entire 3rd floor evacuated temporarily while the sealed section was inspected. Contractors cut a small access hole in the barrier. They shone lights into the gap. The 8-foot space appeared empty. Just the original corridor. Beige walls, ceiling tiles, nothing inside. But when they installed a camera through the hole, a simple webcam on a pole, the feed showed something different. The hallway wasn't empty. Figures stood inside, dozens of them, motionless, facing the camera. The contractor pulled the camera back immediately. The access hole was sealed with metal plating, welded shut. The entire barrier reinforced with steel framing. No further access attempts were made. But the sounds continued. Footsteps, voices sometimes, faint, indistinct, coming from behind the walls. Employees requested transfers to other floors. Turnover on the 3rd floor increased. Meridian Financial eventually relocated to a different building. The Greystone building's 3rd floor was leased to a tech startup. They were informed of the sealed corridor but not given details, just told it was structural space, not accessible. The startup lasted 6 months before breaking their lease. They reported productivity issues, employees feeling watched, unexplained time gaps during the workday. Even without access to the blind spot, something persisted. The building owner considered demolition, but structural engineers determined removing the 3rd floor would compromise the entire building. The sealed corridor remains, monitored by cameras at both ends. Security footage shows the barriers unchanged. Solid walls, no breaches, but sometimes late at night the cameras glitch. Brief moments where the barriers appear transparent, the hallway beyond visible, figures inside, standing, watching the cameras, waiting for something or someone. Jennifer Cates left Meridian Financial shortly after the corridor was sealed. She doesn't work in office buildings anymore, doesn't walk through hallways without checking camera coverage maps first. She keeps a copy of the footage from the internal cameras, the files Dr. Marsh tried to destroy, the frame showing the figures surrounding frozen people in the blind spot. She reviews it sometimes, looking for patterns, for meaning, trying to understand what happens in spaces where cameras don't see, where time moves differently, where something watches and waits in the gaps between monitored zones. The grey stone building still operates. 15 floors of office space, 500 employees passing through hallways every day. Security cameras cover 94% of the building. The remaining 6% exists in blind spots, small gaps, 8 feet here, 12 feet there. Technical limitations, budget constraints, normal security coverage. But some gaps aren't technical. Some blind spots hide spaces that exist between camera fields, between moments, between the time we experience and the time that passes while we're frozen, studied by figures we never see. The cameras document what they can. The rest exists in files marked incomplete, in footage that ends abruptly, in barriers that seal spaces we don't understand, and in the 8 feet of hallway on the 3rd floor where time still doesn't pass the way it should, where cameras were removed but something still watches, still waits, still studies those who come too close to the gaps we leave in our surveillance, the blind spots we create, and the things that live in them. This has been the Hallway Camera Blind Spot. The files never close, the darkness never forgets.